So once I started reading about this case, I was absolutely invested. Every now and then you come across a story that just really captivates you and, for lack of better words, makes you become fully emotionally invested in what, where, why, all of the questions, and today's story is exactly that. Now, this story might remind a lot of you, especially if you're into true crime or if you've watched Unsolved Mysteries. It will remind you of another similar case that took place in Oslo, particularly of a woman that was found deceased inside her hotel room known as Jennifer Fairgate, although that particular name was proven to be fake. After she was discovered, a lot of people started coming up with different theories, with the most famous one being that she was some sort of spy trying to hide her identity by doing a lot of different things, some unusual things that are similar to this case that we're going to talk about today. Another similar case is that of the Isdal woman who was found burning in a random field by two people, and to this day we have absolutely no idea who she is or what happened to her. And if you guys are interested in that case, I actually did a video on it a few months ago. I will link it up here for you guys and in the description box below. So keeping that in mind, that's the kind of path today's video is going to follow. And the story will likely leave you with much more questions than answers. All right, guys, let's get into today's video. Hey guys, if you're new here, let me introduce myself to you quickly before we get into this story. My name is Ashley and this is Heebie-Jeebies TV. I like to talk about crime, creepy, and unbelievable stories, so if that's your thing, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Everything really does help. And for more content, I do have a TikTok. It's linked in my description box below if you guys want more. Alright, so let's get into the story of the man that never was. So today we're going to a very small town known as Sligo in Ireland, and it's located in the north of the country, known as a coastal town, often full of tourists from other parts of Europe. It was June 16th, 2009, when it was a foggy morning and the tide was out. That morning, a man named Arthur Kinsella and his son Brian were going for a run on Ross's Point Beach as they were training for a marathon. Not too far in the distance, they noticed something quite unusual on the beach, although they were still a little bit too far away, so they couldn't quite make it out. As they got closer to whatever this was, he started to notice that it was looking a little bit like a human, but his initial thought that it must have been some sort of mannequin. When they finally got close enough to whatever this was, both of the men realized that they were actually looking at the body of a deceased male. Now, initially, the men had assumed that this man had passed away by drowning accidentally, and then his body had been washed up onto the shore, which makes complete sense if you think about the circumstances under which he was found. Upon closer examination, they also noted that the man was wearing a purple Speedo, and he also had his underwear over it with a navy shirt tucked into it as well. Additional pieces of clothing of his were also found surrounding him. Some of them were scattered and others were neatly folded on a nearby rock. The men would also go on to describe this particular man that they found as being elderly with a frail body and gray hair. The two men then said a quick prayer before calling authorities to report what they had found, which then led to a very lengthy and confusing investigation that police were never able to fully make sense out of. So once authorities arrived to the beach, they took a closer look and immediately noticed that the clothing found on the beach had all of its tags purposely removed, likely with something sharp similar to scissors. What they were able to gather from the clothing they found was that it was mostly from a popular retailer known as C&A, which was fairly well known across Europe, mainly Germany and Austria. In the pockets of that clothing, they also came across a few items that belonged to this man, and those were money, tissues, aspirin, band-aids, and a bar of hotel soap. Now, this soap bar gave authorities some hope, believing that they could potentially track down where this bar of soap came from, maybe the manufacturer or the hotel where it came from, and then therefore they could connect the dots. Unfortunately, no connection was ever made from this bar of soap to any hotel in Ireland at the time. They also failed to find any sort of identification or wallet belonging to this man, but when they were looking at him, it was estimated that he was somewhere in his late 50s to early 60s and was approximately 5'10". His body was then taken away by the Sligo medical examiner, where they discovered even more confusing information. So initially, it was believed that this man did pass away by drowning, considering the way he was found, which makes total sense. But when the examiner was taking a closer look at his body, he was unable to find any sort of trace of saltwater drowning, which obviously meant that he must have passed away from a different manner. But when he was looking at him, he was not able to find any sort of trauma signs on his body that could have potentially led to the idea that this might have been a homicide. Finally, towards the end, it was decided that this particular man had passed away due to cardiac arrest, aka a heart attack. His dental records also revealed that he had had extensive amount of dental work done over the years, so obviously someone somewhere must have known this man. Further examinations also revealed something very shocking. The man was in very poor health. Specifically, he was suffering from advanced prostate cancer and even bone tumors. And he was also showing signs of having had previous heart attacks, and he was missing a kidney. Now, based on all of this information, the medical examiner estimated that this man at most had weeks to live. Of course, common sense would tell us to do a toxicology report in order to see if there was some sort of substance inside of this man's system. However, when they did the toxicology test, he came back completely clean, which was also incredibly shocking to the medical examiner. Given his amount of illnesses and the condition that he was in, it was almost 100% believed that he would have been on some sort of painkiller prescription, but he did not appear to be on any at all. The police would go on to investigate this strange and unknown man for the next 5 months before he was buried, having had a small funeral that was attended by a few of the guard die. Sadly, no one ever came forward to claim this man, or no one ever reported a man that looked like him as missing. During those 5 months, police were able to retrace this man's last steps using extensive CCTV footage and a bunch of witnesses, which is exactly what we're going to dive into in the rest of this video today. But to this day, no one has any idea who this man is or where he came from. So again, using a lot of CCTV footage, police were able to trace this man's steps backwards to the point when he first arrived into town. He was first spotted arriving into Sligo at 6:28 p.m. on Friday, June 12th from Derry, Ireland by bus. When he was seen on camera, he had a black shoulder bag and a standard carry-on roller bag. He was then seen taking a taxi to the city center of Sligo. The first hotel he went to was apparently completely sold out based on the people that saw him there that day, and so he went back to the taxi that took him to another hotel known as the Sligo City Hotel, located on Quay Street. Now, the distance between this hotel and the bus station where he had arrived from was only approximately 10 minutes away by walking, which meant to the police that this guy was definitely not familiar in the area because most people would have just walked. When the man did arrive to the second hotel, he was able to check in. He paid for 3 nights in full and in cash as well. He also gave the name Peter Bergmann, and he listed his address as being Ein Stetterson 154472 Vienna, Austria. Unfortunately, though, the hotel never bothered to ask this man for his ID in order to verify who he was, which is standard hotel procedure, but for some reason, the attendant that day did not follow protocol and did not ask him for his ID. The hotel attendant also recalled that Peter, which is what I'm going to refer to him for the rest of this video, spoke with a Germanic accent, which made sense based on the address that he had written down. Regardless, after the check-in process, Peter was then given keys to room 705. Now, the following day, Peter was seen on camera going about his day in a very normal fashion. He was seen going to a post office at 10:49 a.m. where he bought 8 stamps and airmail stickers. He was then seen running errands downtown and arriving back to the hotel for some food, followed by a few smoke breaks. No one really ever recalled seeing Peter talk to anyone. For the most part, it was said that he just kind of kept to himself. On Sunday, June 14th, he was then seen exiting the hotel towards a taxi. Once he got in, the taxi recalled Peter asking him if he knew of a nice, quiet beach where he could swim. The taxi driver knew of the perfect spot, and that happened to be Ross's Point Beach. And so with that, the two men started to drive off in that direction. During the ride there, the taxi driver recalled that Peter did ask him a couple questions, but he didn't really classify him as being a chatty person. He recalls that Peter asked him whether or not buses went to Ross's Point Beach, and he also revealed to him in their conversation that he was from Austria. When they finally arrived to the beach, Peter stepped out of the taxi. Now, the taxi driver thought that he was going to get out here and go about his day. However, to his surprise, all Peter did was step out of the taxi and just stood there by the door, taking in the view, and then nodded, almost as if he were nodding in approval. He then got back into the car and told the taxi driver to take him back to the hotel. On Monday, June 15th, Peter then checked out of his hotel after requesting a late checkout. He then deposited his key at reception and was seen with a purple plastic bag along with what appeared to be black luggage. He was then spotted in several locations that day as he made his way to the bus station. Then again in front of a shopping area known as Quay Shopping Center, waiting by the door in an awkward stance for a few minutes before he went to the bus station again. Now, at the bus station, he was seen pulling out a few pieces of paper from his pocket. He was seen reading them before he decided to rip them up into a bunch of tiny pieces and then dispose of them in a nearby trash can. He was also spotted ordering a cappuccino, drinking it, and also having a ham and cheese sandwich while he waited for his bus. A man named Vincent Dunbar would later come forward, and he was also at the bus station that day when he said he was approached by Peter. Peter approached him asking about which bus went to Ross's Point Beach, but it did strike Vincent as quite odd when Peter kind of just walked away abruptly, ending the conversation without really acknowledging him or saying thank you. In the end, to Vincent, he said that Peter appeared to be in some sort of stress or confused or almost as if he were in some sort of pain. Peter was then seen boarding the bus to Ross's Point Beach at 2:20 p.m. Now, when he got to the beach, there were approximately 16 witnesses that recall seeing Peter there. He appeared to be in a fairly good mood, everything seemed to be pretty normal, and he was even seen greeting people passing him by on the beach. Others would go on to see him entering the water as he rolled up his pants towards his ankles. It was not like he was trying to hide that he was there or what he was doing or even showing any signs of what would happen next. Around 5 p.m., he was then seen at a yacht club, and then around 9:10 p.m., he was seen by 2 women carrying something. Although it was getting dark at that point, they were not able to see what he was carrying. Then at 9:30 p.m., he was seen by another couple on the beach who had driven up to watch the sunset. They both said that he was walking alone along the shoreline, and to them it seemed like he was just walking along the beach by himself, kind of just pondering about life. At 11:50 p.m., he was then seen by another woman, and he was still walking along the shoreline by himself, except now he was carrying around a plastic bag. This was approximately 30 minutes before high tide was scheduled to arrive. And this was also the last time Peter Bergmann was seen alive. The next time he was seen was at 6 a.m. when his lifeless body was discovered on the beach. Then there was another piece of interesting information that the police discovered as they were skimming through hours and hours of CCTV footage. It was the purple plastic bag. Peter was not just seen with this bag once, but basically every time he left the hotel. Whenever he would leave the hotel, he was seen with this purple plastic bag, and it was full of something. Whenever he would return back to the hotel, the purple plastic bag was nowhere in sight, leading authorities to believe that he had emptied out whatever contents were inside that bag and then had put it inside his pocket. In total, he was seen leaving the hotel with this particular purple bag 13 times. Now, on top of all of this, anytime he was caught on camera, police noticed that he was never on any sort of cell phone, and he also never spoke to anyone other than the people at the reception desk at the hotel. As for the stamps and the airmail stickers that he had bought earlier in his trip, police were unfortunately never able to find them or trace them back or kind of figure out if he had corresponded with anyone in his last few days. But that wasn't it. Police also noticed something very strange. As they were looking through the videos, they also noticed that Peter would sometimes stand still and look at the camera. It was almost as if he was kind of surveying the area to see where there were cameras. And they saw him doing this at a few of the major locations like the hotel, the bus station, and whatnot. Other than those major points, police were never able to find out exactly where Peter had gone because it seemed like he had purposely chosen to travel down streets where he knew that he was not going to be caught on camera. And so to this day, police have never been able to fully retrace his steps or find out exactly what he was dumping out in that purple plastic bag. So since police were never able to trace where this man came from and the fact that no one ever came forward to claim him or report him as missing, police decided to look into the address that he gave at the hotel. But as you've probably guessed by now, the address that he gave was fake. When they looked it up, it just led to an empty lot somewhere in Austria. When police decided to look into the name Peter Bergmann, thinking that they would find some sort of clue as to who this guy was, it did not turn up any sort of person. In the end, it would turn out to be a completely fake identity. And on top of all of this, there were many questions that the police had about this guy, aside from who he was or where he came from. For example, they wanted to know why he had chosen to go to Sligo, where did he come from, how did he enter Ireland in the first place, why did he choose Sligo, what did he do with his personal belongings, why did he dispose of them, or whether or not he actually intended to end his own life at the beach, or if there was some sort of accident that caused him to have a heart attack. They were also wondering why no one had ever come forward to claim him, if he had friends or family somewhere, or if he had ever actually mailed out those letters. There were so many questions, but very few answers, but we do have a few theories. So the most common theory is that this particular man wanted to take his own life. Now, this is kind of easy to make sense out of, considering that he did have a very aggressive terminal illness. Rather than waiting for it to consume him, police think that maybe he wanted to take matters into his own hands. And this could have potentially meant traveling to a destination of his own choice, getting his affairs in order, doing things his way, as a way to have some sort of control over this debilitating disease. If it's possible that he knew he was going to pass away, like the coroner said at the beginning, he probably would have only had a few weeks max to live. It's possible that he might have wanted to pass away on his own terms, even if that meant passing away alone. Another popular theory I've seen floating around is that he could have potentially been a spy. Now, this is similar to the other case I was telling you guys about, and a big chunk of this comes from the fact that it seemed like he had planned this all quite meticulously. The biggest piece of evidence that pushes people in this direction that maybe he could have been a spy is that he was looking out for the cameras, which is not something that most people would instinctively do. Also, the fact that he was able to think several steps ahead and basically wipe out his entire identity. All of this planning and all of his steps that he took kind of showed that he had some sort of training, whether it was military training or police training. Something along those lines allowed him to be able to think several steps ahead and efficiently put his plan into action. This could potentially also explain why no one has come forward to claim him. Maybe he could have potentially been estranged from his friends and family due to his nature of work. This could also explain the cutting of the labels on all of the clothing and why he gave a fake name and a fake address. However, I have seen a lot of people contest the label thing on the clothing, mainly because a lot of people don't like having labels on their clothing because it just becomes a way too itchy. But let me know what you guys think. Now, as for where this story stands today, it was reported that the guard dye do have Peter Bergmann's DNA, but due to a policy that they have, they do not send their DNA to genetic testing sites like Ancestry or 23andMe, which basically means that unless someone comes forward and claims Peter Bergmann as someone they know or a relative, we will likely never find out the true identity of who Peter Bergmann was. And that is the story of the man who never was. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that he just wanted to take his own life and take that situation into his own hands for some sort of control? Or do you think there's some more backstory that we don't fully understand yet? I will also link some information here down below and in the description box if you guys know any information about Peter Bergmann, who he was, where he came from. I'm sure someone somewhere out there knows who this man was. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.